Lightning strikes by my window, hits my chest right in the morning, like a warning. Could have slept here for days.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this webinar on our digital communication tool, ADAPT. Before we start, I'm going to give you a brief overview of what you can expect to happen in the next 45 minutes, and then I'll hand you over to Hayley. So, effective communicators are made, not born. That is, everyone can be an effective communicator and reap the benefits from just adapting their conversations. It starts here by understanding your own communication preferences and understanding that others are going to differ from yours. So by the end of this webinar, you will have learned more about your personal communication preferences and how they might differ from others. My name is Pip Brown, Head of Project Delivery for Think, Inspire and Create. Thank you so much for joining us for this one-hour webinar. We're really excited about our new digitalized version of our communication tool, ADAPT, and we really hope you like it. In the next 45 minutes, you'll hear from Hayley. She will talk to you more about the importance of effective communication and how we can all get more from our conversations. Juliet will talk you through the ADAPT journey from the point at which it starts, which is here, today, to where it could take you, your conversations and your teams. We will play you a short video and then a short demonstration on the ADAPT tool and what it looks like itself, what you can expect to happen as you work through the tool and what your personal outcomes might look like, which is basically a donut, and you'll get what I mean at the end. We'll talk more about the different types of communication preferences. We'll look at a case study which resulted in some surprising outcomes for a team who had completed the ADAPT tool. This brought a real shift in their thinking about how they approach new projects from that point onwards. So then we'll follow up with a short summary before we'll move into a question and answer session at the end. Can I just remind you, during the webinar, your cameras will be off and you will be muted. So if you want to ask a question, feel free to use the question and answer button at the bottom of your screen. Don't use the chat button for now. We won't be monitoring that. If you could just use the Q&A button, that would be great. If you can see your question has already been posted, if you can just like that question, that will obviously prioritize that question up the top of the list, and we will endeavor to address those questions first. And then any that go unanswered at the end, we'll address at the Q&A session. So that's it. That just leaves me now to introduce you to Hayley Monks, founder and managing director of Think, Inspire and Create.
Thanks, Pip. And can I just add my welcome to that of Pip's as well. It's so great to have everybody here, and we are genuinely excited about the launch of our digital tool, ADAPT. So I'm going to talk to you for the next 15 minutes or so about communication in a pandemic. And why it is so important. And firstly, I think it's probably good to talk about why communication is important anyway, and then actually why it's become more important because we are in a pandemic. So to be successful in all elements of life, we need to communicate successfully. Whether that is communicating with our family, communicating with friends, with work colleagues, or with broader stakeholders, the effectiveness of that communication can make such a difference. Really great communication creates accountability. People know what's expected of them and when. It gives people purpose and allows a greater sense of clarity on what is needed. So overall, become more successful. But we communicate all the time, don't we? But maybe we just don't think about it consciously enough sometimes. Maybe we're just actually there talking and saying things. So we learn to speak so that we could talk, but we don't necessarily give it that thought. We may absent-mindedly request a coffee in a coffee shop because we're distracted at the time. That interaction will have an impact on the person who's serving, and you might not even be aware of the impact of that conversation. We learn to write so we can communicate in the written word, and we have natural non-verbal gestures such as my hands moving that we do just out of habit, because it's who we are. And it's not something we're generally taught about. So if we go into schools, you know, we're taught to read and to write, maybe to sing, maybe to act, to debate. We learn lots of things, but we don't learn the art of conversational competence. And that is so important when we actually come to communicate with people effectively. The rise as well of technology has also had a profound impact on communication and conversation. And recent research in America has said the average teenager is texting up to 100 times a day, and they often prefer to have a text conversation with their friends rather than picking up the phone and having a conversation. So we need to be able to have exercises and opportunities to learn and teach people around effective communication. Again, from expert market research, 97% of workers believe that communication, or the quality of that communication, can seriously impact the day-to-day activities that people are doing. It's that important in the workplace. And great communication, effective communication, makes a real difference to teams and how they operate. You know that that moment where you've had a really beautiful conversation, where you walk away and you feel engaged and inspired. You know, as a team, people feel empowered. They understand what they're doing and they're keen to do it. They're keen to make it happen. So it really makes a difference to how we work with one another. And that obviously is so evident in the, you only have to listen to the speech by Amanda Gorman and the following press activity and the movement across a country as big as the USA to understand the power of really great communication. But never more so have we been more conscious or aware of the impact of communication than in the last 10, 12 months. We've gone from scenarios that you see on your screen where we're maybe quite socially sat having a coffee. We've got visuals in front of us, but we can see each other. We can make eye contact. We can feel the energy. We can assess the body language, and we're using all of ourselves to try and understand and communicate effectively with those around us. And that's a really important thing. They are some of the skills that we use to try and see how the other person's reacting to what you've said, whether they're understanding, whether they're engaged with you or not. And that engagement thing is so important. Organisations with connected employees that feel connected to the brands, the purpose, the value, connected to their manager, the purpose and what they're doing as a team, are 20 to 25% more productive in what they do every day because they're engaged in that work and that team and that ethos in what they're doing. So as we've moved from sitting in those meetings or getting those gatherings to a virtual environment, that's what's made it a lot harder for us. So sometimes now we've moved from that seeing, feeling, listening to sometimes just hearing, particularly if cameras aren't on. And it's a lot easier when working on remotely, working on screen, to maybe not see some of that body language, not necessarily see some of the little things that might give you some understanding about how they're feeling or how they're responding to a situation. It's far harder to make eye contact through a screen than it is face to face. So we need to be hugely aware of this, because communication is important to all of us, and it's something we all value. It's a skill that we all desire to have. And even though we might not say it or may not have thought about it recently, it is a desirable skill, and it's all around us. So if you flick through job adverts, you'll often see essential is really great communication skills or effective communication skills. It's listed in there as a valuable skill that people want. We want it from, you know, our managers. We want to be informed. We want it from teachers in school. It's required in sales. It's required in service, in medicine, and dare I say, in politics. We want people to communicate effectively so that we really understand what's happening, when it's happening, how it's going to impact me. It's something that's hugely valuable to us. So where do we start by trying to improve and understand our communication skills? Well, firstly, accepting speaking does not equal communicating, and that actually we're all a bit different. We're all a little bit unique, and our individual elements make us do things slightly different to the next person. So I'm sure if now you think for a moment of the last few interactions you had, some of them were like, this is so cool, get you, we get on, this is good, we connected. You know, it didn't take much effort, the magic just happened and we've got along. And those people probably have similar communication preferences to you. And then there's sometimes where you come across somebody that you don't get at all, it doesn't click, and you're wondering, well, what went wrong? I don't know what happened there. And there was some reflection afterwards. It could be, you know, they were very overexcitable. It could be they didn't stop talking. It could be they didn't talk at all. But there will be a number of things that you'll reflect on and think, that one worked and that one didn't. And that's a great start to understanding your actual communication preferences and styles. So looking at that uniqueness, we have to really understand that first in terms of actually we're different. There's a fantastic English saying, it actually comes from the English Bible, which says, treat others as you would like to be treated yourself. And that's great for values and behaviour. In communication, it doesn't always work, because how I like to communicate and my preferences might actually be detrimental to communicating with somebody else. I could be very direct and go in and to start a very quick conversation with somebody actually who might like a bit more warming up, who might like to answer a few more questions, or just might like a different style or approach to how I do things. So recognizing that we're all beautifully unique, we might need to flex and adapt how we communicate with other people to get the very best out of things. So as I said, sometimes it might feel uncomfortable. So sometimes you can have that great conversation, sometimes it might feel uncomfortable, but it doesn't mean actually it's always going to feel like that. And it doesn't mean you can't learn to adapt. So what I'd like you to do now is, if you're in a position to do so, if you can grab yourself a piece of paper and a pen and write out your signature as you would do. No matter which, whether you're left-handed or right-handed, put it in the hands, you would write it then, sign your signatures. So like, hey monks, and it'd be a big scribe and flicking around why. It's, you know, it's me, the signature reflects me. And then take the same pen and put it into the opposite hand and do the same thing. Have a go at writing your signature. Now, I don't know about how you're feeling right now, but when I first did that exercise, it didn't feel comfortable. My signature wasn't very legible. You wouldn't have compared the two and say, yes, that's the same. But nonetheless, it was my signature. And that's really what it's like sometimes when you start to adapt and communicate, or to try something new on working with somebody else. Doesn't mean you can't do it. It's just sometimes it feels uncomfortable to do so. But with practice, it can get a little bit better. And that's what we're doing really with ADAPT here. So ADAPT, the purpose of the ADAPT tool, is helping on the process of becoming more aware. We've been using the ADAPT tool for many years now. but this is our digital version that we are so proud of, and we know makes such a huge impact for the people that do it, that we are putting it on the Tickle website as a free to use tool. And the reason being, the people who go there go from your unaware state, which I would describe as, this is me, take me as I find me, I am what I am, just, you know, this is how I communicate, to that awareness stage when they've done the Adapt tool, where they think, okay, so here's some preferences, these are mine, other people aren't the same. So firstly, I'm aware, and that's the first part of learning. It's generating that awareness. I recognize this, and I recognize not everybody's the same. And I might start to notice that other people are a bit different. I might start to register that some people I have effective relationships with and some less effective. The Adapt workshops then seek to understand that in more detail, to unpick it, explore it, so that we can start to work on the actual adapting, flexing and identifying different communication types and how you and your communication preference can flex and adapt towards it as well. And that then gives you the opportunity for you to create your map to mastery. So being able to map out the people that you communicate with and what your plan is for being more effective in communicating with them. So in terms of bringing that all together, 2020 could maybe be defined by the word humanity. Its power, its fragility, and its necessity. 2021, we believe, should be centred on communicating. How, what, where, who, when, and why. Keeping the momentum strong and staying focused. So giving everybody a voice and feeling that voice is heard and understood. People who feel like this are 5 times more likely to feel empowered. So how well you communicate yourself and engage with others can make or break your efforts. And this is why knowing how important and impactful effective communication can be in our personal and our professional lives, this is why we've taken the Adapt tool and created this digital version, and we are putting it on the Tickle website as a free to use tool.
Lightning strikes by my window, hits my chest right in the morning, like a warning. Could have slept here for days. I felt your heartbeat, felt your mouth breathe, but it's not real. We were close to see the sun, but clouds got in our way, and so
Hello, I'm Juliet, the Think Inspire Create team, and I'm a facilitator and coach as part of the team. And I'm here to give you a little bit of a flavour. You saw me briefly earlier, but I'm here to give you a little bit of a flavour about how you can use the Adapt tool for your development. And as Hayley said, it's going to be live for you today after this launch event from our website. So quite excited to share it with you and give you a bit of a flavour of what you can do with it. So Adapt is a really good digital communication preference tool. And what it enables you to do is to go in and find out and become aware about what your preference is and what your strength is. And once you've got that, you can start to understand the other 4 preferences and think about the people around you and how you might communicate, engage, influence, and look at how you interact and work with them. As Taylor said, the Think Inspire Create team have worked with this tool since 2018, and this is the digital version of it. And we've worked with it with hundreds of people through our workshops and working with them on their personal development. What people have told us is the most valuable thing about it is it's simple to understand. Once you've done the tool, you can really start to think about your strengths, how you communicate, how you engage, how you influence, and how you work and create effective relationships. And it's helped people both individually and in teams. In terms of the key benefits that people have got from it, some people have used it to work on their personal development and their one-to-one relationships. So that might be working with their colleagues, their peers, their bosses, managers. Other people have used it to really map out their stakeholders and to do some work with how they interact and how they communicate with customers and clients. And we've even had people who've taken it on to friends and family. I'm not going to go too much into that territory today, but needs to say some people have actually found some interesting differences in their profiles with their partners as well. So it's got some wide-ranging tools, and you can start at the beginning with Adapt in terms of general awareness of yourself and then looking out to how you adapt and flex your style. And you can get a lot deeper with it in terms of how you look at the different styles, your unique style, and those around you as well. So in terms of Adapt as a tool, let me give you a little flavour of what to expect when you actually complete the profile online, and we'll do that through a time-lapse video. So this is the time-lapse video, just showing you what the tool will look like. As you go through, you enter your details. I'll come on to that at the end. Simply work through the instructions and the questions. It's quite quick and straightforward. It'll take you less than 15 minutes to complete the profile. When you get to the end, you will see your profile and your primary and secondary preferences, along with some more information about the other preferences. So it's a great tool to give you your first profile around how you communicate and your preferences. So as you saw from the time-lapse video, there are 4 communication style preferences: driving, collaborating, analysing, and energising. And you will discover your primary and secondary preferences, alongside some more information about the other preferences. You can do all 4. So when Haley was talking about preferences earlier, we all are a mix and blend and we can do all 4. However, we naturally like to work with our primary and secondary preferences. So starting to understand that helps you understand why you react the way in certain communications and interactions, but also why other people might interact in certain ways. And that might be good, or it might be not so good. You might click, or it might feel a bit sticky or clunky when you're engaging with certain people or different interactions. And it can also be different in different situations. So in terms of looking at the 4 styles, you'll also find out more about each of those 4 styles from doing the profile, and you'll have the option to have a copy of that email to you afterwards, hence why you email when you complete the Adapt profile. So that'll be great. You can get that and then work with it. It's all about giving you the awareness so you can start to think about how you adapt and flex your style to communicate, engage, influence, and get the best from working with others. And it's a really great tool to pull that all together and get you started. So what next once you've completed the Adapt profile? So once you've completed the Adapt profile, you may want to share that with colleagues and sort of peers. You may want to work with that with your boss. You may decide you want to just start to try and notice the other communication style preferences around you. Map out your stakeholders and start to think about where relationships and interactions feel good and where they don't feel so good, and what might it be about the different styles and preferences you're coming from. How might you start to work with that differently? If you want, you might like to progress onto Adapt for Me, which is our one-to-one development session. This is an hour session exploring your communication style preferences from Adapt. It takes you deeper into that, deeper into understanding the other 4 preferences, mapping out your stakeholders and giving you some tools and techniques to really focus on what is important for you in your situation, your context, and what you would like to do. And it gives you come away with some really clear actions for how you can take that forward to get some really great results to you and how you communicate and how you engage going forward. You might like to consider Adapt for My Team. So this is a 2-hour interactive workshop. And what it does is bring a team together, look at the individual preferences through Adapt, really get deeper into the 4 different preferences, share that with and explore that with individuals within the team, and then we bring together your team profile. So your team communication preference profile. And here we then explore what that means for the team and ways of working. And we start to look at how you can optimize how the team's working, get the best out of the different preferences, strengths and styles you've got within the team. And this can be useful for thinking about how you in teams particularly look at making sure everyone feels valued and involved, looking at the differences, where your preference might have an influence on how you work, team meeting structure, how you interact one-to-one with each other as well. If you're a manager, how you might interact and flex your style differently for your team as well. And it can have some really valuable results. So I want to just share a quick case study with you. So this was an SME business, a team that has some really big growth plans, but they also wanted to invest in building themselves as a team and working better together. So they completed the workshop and they'd also done their individual adapt profiles. And if you see from the preference here, this team here had a really high collaborating and energizing preference. So it was a really fun, fast-paced, high, fast communications in meetings, etc. And a really pacey, fun environment. Lots of ideas, lots of things being thrown around. That team came away with some really key learnings from that session. They learned a lot about each other and thinking about how they might interact individually with each other. But they also learned a lot about, they all got on, and that's no surprise because there's very similar preferences there. They needed to listen more and explore the analysing preference in a bit more detail. So really start to question, bring some of that preference into how they communicated, how they ran meetings, how they started to put projects and programmes together. Whilst they had really high levels of trust, they needed to question more and feel comfortable being more critical and actually starting to drive out some different options. They needed to agree actions and who was doing what. So it's really high energy, really high pace in their communications and meetings, but often they weren't really sure who was doing what afterwards. So really thinking about how they could start to structure that differently. They wanted to make sure that they could keep their values and the ethos and all the strengths of their preferences combined, but they also wanted to introduce some more systems and process so they could actually incorporate some of the other preferences and really optimize how they could work together. So that's just an example of some takeaways that a team got from the team workshop. So in terms of the preferences, here's a quick glance of all the preferences. So you have driving, analysing, energising and collaborating. And I'll hand back over to Hayley now.
Thanks, Juliet. So hopefully you really enjoyed that the little video, the overview, showing you exactly how to do it, although I don't think an instructional video is necessary. It really is that easy to do. I know some of our testers have said some questions, they really had to think about it, they really had to challenge themselves on what their first choice word would be. But you know, it is, the quicker you do it, the better, you'll get a better result from that. Whilst this is on the screen, I'm hoping you've had an opportunity to have a little read through. If not, I will give you another minute to do so, because I would love to do a poll with you and go instinctively what you think is your primary adapt preference. If you had to choose one based on what you read, what would it be? Because then we'll be really curious to hear, when you've gone away and you've completed the tool, did it come out that way? So here's a quick poll. Just click which one you think is your primary preference. Okay, so nearly all of you done, just a few more to go. Showing some interesting results. Right, I'm going to end it there. Most of you have completed. A few of you may be questioning or maybe reading a bit more. Maybe that's our analyzers. Here we go. Okay, share the results. So hopefully you can all see the results on the screen. It's really interesting that we've got 3 of the communication preferences that are almost in balance. and that analysing preference is much, much lower there. Something, and that in itself is something to be really, really aware of when you've got a group of people together in terms of their communication style and preferences as well. So thanks for doing that. Really, really interesting insight for us. Do let us know when you go and do the assessment if actually when it comes out it isn't what you thought it is, because we'd be really curious to understand why. Maybe that's some reflection for you as well. So just close that. We're now going to go on to any Q&A. I can see there are a couple of questions in there. One being, I was frozen. Sorry about that. But we also have, been the biggest lesson learned from Team Tickle from using, what have been the biggest lessons learned from Team Tickle from using the Adapt team, and how effective has it been for you as a team? So I would say the lessons learned have been huge, because the product hasn't stayed wholly static in the nearly 3 years we've used it. We have, excuse the pun, adapted it a bit. The key thing, the first thing, is that awareness, that penny drop moment, that beautiful aha moment when somebody goes, I wondered why I kind of just didn't gel with that person. That, I think that's been the huge lessons, that individual awareness. You don't need a huge amount of insight to understand those changes and those communication preferences. So I think that has been the biggest lesson. And that's part of the reason why we're making it free to use. How effective it's been for us as a team? Hugely, because we are a very passionate and lively bunch. And if anybody who knows me, you know, I'm actually not very good on detail. I'm a terrible speller. And so sometimes, you know, you might need to reread something I've written a couple of times. And I often speak very fast and assume you know exactly what it is I was thinking before I picked up the phone and rang you. So it's been a huge lesson learned for how we operate together. And we've done a lot of these sessions and tested a lot of it together. And we are far stronger as a team now. And we'll very confidently call out, actually, we are not taking on board some of the other preferences or some of our weaker preferences that can help make us collaborate and be more effective. Any other questions?
Doesn't seem to. Oh,
No.
one more. Do people's preferences change?
Yes.
I would say, Jenny, if you let me answer, I would say yes is the answer to that. Interesting, actually, because I've done a tool a number of times, and I come out. I'm an energizer driver. They are my strongest preferences, and then closely followed by collaborating, and then the analyzer. That is an area that I need to grow now. I know that I need to be more questioning. I probably need to be a bit more cautious. I probably need to probably think more about detail. I know that that's an area, but interestingly, I did it again sometime later, and although my preferences were the same, they were exactly the same, they had changed size slightly. So my pink had got a little bit bigger, the red had got a little bit smaller. They were still the same, but they had changed a little bit.
Yeah, and I would say the same. I think it's very situational. So what now we're aware of it as a team, having done it again recently. What we've all experienced is that our analysing preferences is starting to be more stronger. We're more aware of it. We're conscious of it. We're all thinking about, are we communicating that way? Are we questioning? Are we doing those things? So very much so. Juliet, one that would be great for you to answer. How would you say this compares to DISC or Myers-Briggs profiling?
I mean, this tool is based on some of the same personality theory, but I guess the key difference is it's really focused and developed to look through the lens of communication style preferences. So I think in terms of all of these things, I think this gives you a really good start to get into that. There's some depth to it. In terms of the Myers-Briggs profiling, that is more a complete personality profiling, and you're looking at lots of different lenses through that. And there's lots of depth and lots of different things you can do with that. So this tool, and again, DISC is kind of a personality profiling in terms of style and strengths. So this one, the lens, is really about the communication style preferences and what it's for. So it's almost taking a smaller slice of that. Hope that answers your question, gives you a bit of a background into that.
And Ben, as a team has a lot of overlap in their adapt preference, is that a good or bad thing? There's no good or bad in any of this. Okay, there isn't a good or bad. It's understanding and being awareness of those preferences and how then you work together. So the case study that we gave you, they had quite low analysing and driving preferences. Now, raising the awareness of it, they can then start to really think about how they're communicating with one another, how they're operating, and therefore take actions and activity to close some of those gaps. So I don't think there's any right or wrongs. It's you know, that's in communication and leadership style. It's how you utilise your preferences and how you flex and adapt to make it work for you as a team. Other questions on here? I think that probably answers, what does a well-rounded team profile look like? I mean, obviously, if you've got a perfect balance, you're very lucky. But because we tend to attract people we like around us, or certain job roles attract certain characteristics, sometimes you know, you don't get that blend. So hence being aware and understanding how to adapt and flex. So Rachel, I didn't go into the research particularly on how we created the tool, but literally it started with words and post-it notes just over 3 years ago, putting words down, post-it notes on paper, and some test and learn. So there are, you know, it's based on Carl Jung's model. So in terms of extrovert, introvert, thinking, feeling, preferences, it's based on that model, but the lens that we put over it is to focus on communication. So are there any other questions?
There's a few here.
Yeah, how can we cajole? This one's a good one for you, Juliet. I'm not giving you all the difficult ones, honestly. How can we cajole the analysers to be more communicative? The poll bears out that analysers aren't as interested in communicating as other styles. It would suggest that, wouldn't it, from this webinar?
I think, and with the analysing preference, all of these preferences, and one of the things that kind of I think is really good about the tool, and also when you're working with people with it, using it, is that all of the preferences have got strengths, and they've all got things that are like, okay, watch out for us. And I think, you know, any one of these preferences can lead, any one of these preferences can do different things within an interaction, a meeting, situations. I think in terms of the analysers, one of the things in terms of encouraging, if you've got quite a high analyser type preference in your team, is, you know, with particular individuals, is to think about how you are giving them the opportunity to communicate. Because sometimes we think that we are allowing some time in a meeting for people to speak, and we actually aren't. So it's really thinking about what are the opportunities to allow them. Analysers like to have some time to reflect. They will often be the ones that will in meetings sit back, but they are listening to everything, and they'll have some absolute gold nuggets at the end that sometimes they get completely missed. So it is about allowing them some space to do that sometimes, to actually come forward and to communicate that. And they also like bringing some of the key facts, and the analyzer preference is really great at seeing some of the flaws in things and actually being able to say, well, hang on a minute, have we thought about? So I think it is about, you know, in terms of cajoling them, is creating a space or creating a structure to meetings or to interactions where they can be prepared, they've had time to reflect, and they can actually bring and give their, the other preferences are quite quick to jump in and can often talk over that analyzer preference. So there's a bit about listening starts to play out there as well. So you can see how you can start to get into this. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it's really good. I think when we're running workshops, I like to sort of not necessarily using these preferences, but there are some people might say the black pens, the yellow pens, and the red pens. So if we're drawing something up on the wall, the black pens leap up and they want to get involved and they want to start sketching out the pictures. The yellow pens will hang back a bit and maybe reflect, but then get involved and actively start drawing. It's the red pens who are usually the last to engage, and sometimes they need a bit of cajoling to come up, and it may well be, what's not working with this? Where have we gone wrong? How can you help us improve it? It's that invitation to get them involved and to contribute. When they've had time, as they like to do, to reflect and look and see what's there and analyse it in a bit more detail. Right. Anything else?
So, Hayley, was that John's question?
No, that was. I was just building on what Juliet had said. Then, as part of the Adaptify team, is there any of the support you can provide to embed the change? Yeah, so we have a whole series of workshops. Adapt itself was part of the starting module of our 360 Degree Manager program. So it's part of our Management Essentials. It's the first day. And what better way to explore a bit about yourself at the very start of such a program. So there are a whole series of modules around personal development for you as an individual and as a leader that can help individuals and teams beyond this. So actually take that understanding through further workshops as well. John, does the analyzer provide tips, guide on the best ways to engage the other preferences? Yes, Juliet, do you want to answer that?
I was just about to answer that. So John, yes, certainly in the one-to-ones and the workshops, we go through kind of a deeper exploration of the 4 communication style preferences. And within that, we do look at actually how do you really engage them and bring that strength out, what to do and maybe what not to do, and some top tips about how you might change and adapt your approach to really get the best from that interaction. So that's absolutely that's some of the key work to help you adapt and flex the tools and techniques to do that as well.
That's
fabulous. I think that is all the questions, unless anybody has anything else. No, that was great. I mean, you know where to contact us. You obviously go to the Tickle website, you will find Adapt. You can put us on the contact us page as well.
Do you want to put the link in the chat?
You can do, yes.
Okay. Perhaps Keris was put the link in the chat. That would help.
So, what next? So we would love you to go and take your 15 minutes of self-development time. So go away and do it. And we would love feedback as well. So we really want to hear what you think. If you go and do it in the next week, we'll be collating the names of everybody who does it in the next week and putting them into a draw, and the successful person from the draw will win a one-to-one consultation on their communication preferences. So well worth going along and doing that. Please do share it on social media and get your results emailed to you. We'd love it if you share it on social media. We will obviously want lots of people to come and use the tool, so please do share it. Following on from here, we'll give you the link for you to pick up a free gift. So this is about a focus on personal development. So it's something for you to watch and reflect on, which is to be 20, 30 minutes of your time. But again, one of our most popular webinars that we do. We're going to give you a copy of all of those. Follow us on LinkedIn for more updates, and of course do contact us if you're interested in Adapt for me and Adapt for my team. So all it leaves me now to say is thank you very much to all of you for coming along. It was great to have you all here. And thanks to the team as well for getting involved and doing this. I know it's not everyone's cup of tea. Yeah, I hope that it was enjoyable. Please do let us have some feedback and go to the website and have a go at finding out what your communication preferences are. Thanks very much, everybody.